Stanford University.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here today. So I'm here to talk about a project that we did at the D.school called Stanford 2025, not to be confused with Stanford 125, which could be confusing. It's going to involve a bit of time travel, which actually takes up a lot of screen space. So I'm just going to have to clear the screen off really quickly. Okay, there we go. This is Stanford circa 1922. It's the oldest aerial shot that I could find. We're actually over here somewhere in this direction right now. The thing about it is, many things have changed since this photo was taken, many things. However, some things haven't really changed. Students still come to campus to learn. They still come for 4 years. They still take classes. Classes are still mainly held in lecture halls. But the world outside, the world that we're putting students into, is changing quite a bit. And so that brings up a question: what do we do to prepare these students for the world that they're coming into? So at Stanford 2025, we looked at what should the on-campus learning experience be like in 10 years. So in 10 years, should living and learning on campus feel different than it does today? And we talked to many, many faculty members, hundreds actually of faculty, staff, and students to figure this out. And we actually focused on the students. So these are a bunch of our students that we interviewed. We also had them in classes. We had them engage other students to understand how they were working through their experience. We looked at how they prepare for college, what they do, how they choose their majors, and where they think they're going after college. And I hate to just sum up all that, a year's worth of work, dozens of students in one quote, but I've now got 12 minutes and 37 seconds, so I will. And this is a quote from one of our alumni who we interviewed as well. "College is about building a great human, intellectually and emotionally, and answering the question, who do I want to be?" And I know from the list, I was able to get a list of folks who are in here today. I don't know each and every one of you, but I know a lot of you are educators. And I think this quote's a really interesting thing. So as an educator, what that person is saying is that our job as educators is to build great humans, right? This is like a pretty tall order, I think. So hubris aside, educators have a really big job. It's a really big job. And it's in a context, as I said, that's constantly shifting. And we're putting students out into a world that's changing. So I want to look at that for a second. And I want to talk about a word that's really popular lately, has been for a little while. That word is disruption. But I want to look at it in a slightly different way than I think we normally do, which is to say that disruption, this is the 1906 earthquake. This is the campus after the 1906 earthquake. I don't think disruption nowadays looks like this, right? I don't think it's fire and brimstone. I actually think it's much more adorable. It's kind of adorable disruption. You know, it's this little bird that's one of the companies that's kind of changing the way media works, right? It's hipsters with spare rooms and a swirly logo that's changing the way hotels work. And it's not just changing the way hotels work, it's actually changing public policy in cities all over the world, right? And you've got companies like Lyft and Uber. Lyft is the one with the pink mustache, who are changing the way taxi cabs work. And they're really kind of poking holes and decimating the taxi industry. And they even spell their name with a Y. It's too cute, right? It's adorable. Come on. You know it is. So that begs the question, right? You know what the question is. Are we next? Are we next? Or is the attack of the cute logo coming to the university campus? I know you guys were all thinking about that, because I was too, right? Is it going to look something like this? Is it going to have a mustache? It might. And what does that mean, right? Do I think that's going to happen? I actually don't, in a way, right? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't think it'll have a mustache. I can almost guarantee that. But as I said, I do think the context is changing, right? Like student debt is really high. It's almost at crisis levels, if you think about it. Content's really available online. I think probably a vast majority of what we actually teach in the classroom is now available in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not in the same quality, but in 10 years, who knows? Who knows what that's going to look like? So right now, that question, the question of what should living and learning on campus look like, should it be different? How should it change? That might not be front of mind just yet, but I think in 10 years, that's a really legitimate question. It's a really legitimate question to ask. So we tackled that through this project, Stanford 2025. I mentioned it was a year long. We looked at the entire university and other universities to see how the on-campus experience should change in the next 10 years. And it culminated in an exhibit, this was in May 2014, where we brought folks from the Stanford community in to share 3 or 4 big ideas about how things might change, and then also look at what are the structural differences that might be in place. There were futuristic goggles, because we were going to visit the future. And we were particularly interested in changing the perspective of the folks who were there. So it was all people from Stanford who live like you do, higher education and education. You know, they're completely immersed in it. And we wanted to create a scenario where we'd be able to look at it with fresh eyes and maybe a little bit of humor and maybe step back a little bit and find things in a non-threatening way that might be broken and see in sort of a light-footed way what we might change. And so we put everyone into a time machine. This was our idea. We put everyone into a time machine and we sent everyone to a distant future so that they could look back at 2025, which is 10 years from now, but they were looking back from a distant future with fresh eyes and a new perspective. And that's what I want to do with you guys today. So we're going to do that right now. Don't worry, I downloaded an app that'll help us with the time travel. This is what we're going to do, just in case that wasn't clear. It's now 2015, last I checked. I think it is, yes. We are interested in 2025 because we think in 10 years this might be a seminal date in Stanford's history. Why not? Let's jump 125 years, since this is the 125th anniversary. Let's jump 125 years into the future. So we're going to go to 2140 so that we'll jump right over 2025. But what we want to do is look back at 2025 and see what we see. Okay? You guys ready to do that? I'm gonna have to quit the keynote real quick. Hold on one sec. Okay, you gotta click over here. The Time Traveler app. Oh man, okay, hold on. User agreement, risk, damage to your computer, cellular damage, DNA. I'm just gonna continue. And clicking agree involves risk. Okay, agree. I never read those things anyway. All right, so. Click on launch to instantiate the time traveler. We're going to go to October 18th, 2140. You guys ready? Ready to go? Okay. Let's see if this works. Good luck. See you on the other side. Okay, so we're going past 2025 all the way to 2140. Just takes a second through the wormhole. We're almost there. All right, so now we're going to look back. Okay, this is now a live stream of what you see outside the auditorium. This is actually what campus looks like now. I want to note, there's a couple things to note. One, autonomous cars are everywhere. Thanks Sebastian. And also, yes, some people got that. And also, cars with drivers have been just actually completely banned from campus for 40 years. So you'll never see, this is what it looks like. Everybody's enjoying each other. We're all cruising around. It's really actually a pretty good time. And a lot of other things have changed, but I want to note 2 things. Now that we're here in the future, I'm going to start speaking about 2025 in the past tense. Okay, it'll be in the past tense because that's grammatically correct. Somewhere around 2050, good grammar comes back. And I want to make sure, yes, that's right. I'm not even sure I said that with good grammar, but it will come back. And so I want to make sure I'm speaking in the past tense. So that'll feel a little weird. Another thing that'll feel weird is when you look at the past, it starts to look a little weird when you're far in the future. You know, it's sort of like barbers used to be surgeons, you know what I mean? Way back when. So we're going to look at 2025, and we're pretty far away. It's going to look a little strange, okay? And the present that we left, 2015, might look even stranger. So let's look at that. I'm going to share 3 big changes to the university and then a bunch of small things that changed along the way. So the first big change was called Open Loop University. I like to use a metaphor to explain this. And actually, in 2140, this still isn't possible. So think about this for a second. How wonderful would it be if you could do all your exercise in 4 years and then just be fit for life, right? Wouldn't that be just, I would totally sign up. Whatever it was, the cost, 10 grand, you name it, right? It's so strange, though, because that's the way education was sort of proposed for hundreds of years. It's like, you know what? You just go, you'll be 18, you go for 4 years, and then you just go on the career for 50 years. It's great. You'll be fine. You know, maybe you go back to grad school, but not everybody, right? So that's how we used to do it. The open loop recognized the kind of strangeness of this, and instead of the 4-year block, created a new situation where you'd have 6 years that you could spend down over a lifetime. So you could come in and out. Let's look at how that looked. These are some ads from the 20s and 30s. So, and this ad shows one person's loop where she looped in for 2 years, then looped out to go to Nepal and work for the UN, then looped back in for 2 more years. Both she and her professors said that when she came back, she had much more passion and focus. Then she looped out again and would come back, you know, every 5 or 6 years for 6 to 8 months as her career shifted back and forth. Incidentally, this was a pretty good business model for the university. I'm just going to say that. Another thing that was related, and I'm noticing I'm slightly short on time, so I'm going to go right through this pretty quick, but is the idea of a skill print. So this replaced something called a transcript. A transcript was sort of like an archive of what you had done. It was like, you know, classes you had taken and grades you had gotten in those classes in hopes that this would represent your potential in the future. And it was sort of like a piece of paper that you might give to another academic institution or an employer. The skill print instead looked at how you were applying your skills in the real world and was a dynamic document that would change as you developed. I'd love to go into that more, but I'm going to skip over it for a second. Next was purpose learning. So I have another sort of, I guess it's not really an analogy, but another thing where students, okay, this is, all right, whatever, I'll explain it. Students used to come to a university and declare a major, which was their course of study, which for them was what it felt like to actually be the first step on their life's path. And they would have to do this without any experience as to what that life path might be like, and no context for what it would be. And in purpose learning did 2 things. One, it allowed students to experience what it might be like to go down a path before they went down the path. So for example, if you wanted to study biology, you would go experience being a biologist and then decide if you wanted to study biology. And then also, it pushed students to declare something called a mission rather than a major. And the idea of a mission was that you'd have a sense of purpose along with your course of study. So again, instead of saying, I'm studying biology, you would say, I'm studying biology to solve world hunger. And core to this were something called impact labs. Impact labs were areas where students and faculty from Stanford could work together on real-world problems to give students this feeling of what it would be like to go down this path. This one was the Mideast Politico Lab. Also, there was a major restructuring of campus from departments to these hubs that were called competency hubs. So as an example, one competency hub would be critical inquiry, and the critical inquiry hub might have people from political science, history, law, biology, and the arts. It might have faculty from all those disciplines working together. PACE education was sort of the biggest construct, and what happened in PACE was it allowed students, instead of moving from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, which is basically you move based on calendar year, to a situation where you would advance when you were ready to advance. So it came up with 3 different cycles. There was calibrate, elevate, and activate. Calibrate was a chance for students to try out possible paths, work on their emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence came in pretty strongly at this time. And then also figure out how they learn best. In Elevate, they would explore a deeper course of study, and then in Activate, they would kind of move in and out of the university so that they could have a smooth transition out into the real world. And on that, micro courses were really important. So during Calibrate, students might take 20 to 30 micro courses that lasted 1 to 3 days as a way to figure out what course of study they wanted to take. There was also a thing called a grit bit, which was just a personal dashboard for the student themselves. And it would track data like mood, stress, blood sugar, also who you were studying with, how long you were studying, where you were, present that privately back to the student, and then they could make decisions about their path and their own learning path. And then finally, spaces around were changed quite a bit. In Calibrate, community spaces were really important. Elevate focused on mentorship, and Activate allowed students to work together on projects outside the university, even though they were staying in the university. So I just want to close with a couple of thoughts. And one thing is, well, you know what? Maybe we should quickly get back to 2015. Should we do that? Okay, let's do it. All right, so it's a little faster now. And here we are, we're back. Okay, all right, phew, we made it. There we are. All right, actually, this is flipped around. We're over here now. But I just wanted to say, so as we think about how we're going to prepare students for the future, there's a bunch of different ways we could do it. Should we maybe have them loop in and out of the university so they can get real-world experience and adapt as they go? Should we kind of give them experiences so they can approach their path with a sense of purpose? Should we allow them to move at a pace that's right for them, both intellectually and emotionally? And if we do, what should the university look like then? And the only thing I can say is I have no clue. I have no idea. None, right? I have no idea. It'd be crazy to think that I did, you know? Because I think, and I want to just go to one quote that's actually from the past. This is from the Seuss Report, which is the study of undergraduate education at Stanford. I'm really interested in the last bit of this, that we're creating an education equal to the unfathomable challenges and opportunities that await our students. And it's this word unfathomable that I really hold on to, because I really don't know what this future is. And I think we actually can acknowledge, and I kind of want to own it, I want us all to acknowledge that our job is to prepare students for a future that we're not prepared for ourselves. We're totally not prepared. We don't know. We don't know where this is going. And that's super scary. It's totally daunting. So the question becomes then, how are we going to do that? And I think we can do it in a bunch of ways. One way is just to experiment, right? Try things out and we can see where we go. Another way is to just try and gain perspective on our own situation. So what can we do to give ourselves perspective that will allow us to look back on where we are right now and see what's working and what's not? And then finally, and this was the biggest learning on the project for me, is that we can approach this all with a light heart, right? This is a daunting task. But I think if we approach it with a light heart and a sense of optimism, we're going to do great. We're going to do great, okay? So I promised I would return the slide deck back to where it was when I left. There we go. Thank you.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.